On the wedding day, the MC asked him, "Are you willing to spend the rest of your life with the woman before you?" He didn't answer. It was me who spoke for him. "He's not willing." The entire room erupted in shocked murmurs. I added another line, "What a coincidence, I don't want to either." 1. When Ethan took my hand from my father's, his gaze drifted toward the space below the stage. Following his line of sight, I spotted Haley. I remained silent, pretending not to notice anything. The officiant's solemn voice rang in my ears. "Mr. Ethan Collins, do you take Miss Chloe Miller to be your wife? As her husband, do you promise to love her, protect her, and encourage her forever, whether in good times or bad, in wealth or in poverty, and never leave her side as you spend your lives together? Do you agree to this?" Ethan pressed his lips together without speaking, instead letting his gaze fall upon Haley once more. The officiant repeated the question. Ethan remained silent. The once lively venue plunged into boundless silence. I snatched the microphone from the MC's hand. "He's unwilling." My voice struck Ethan like a thunderclap, jolting him awake. He withdrew his gaze in stunned disbelief. A wave of murmurs swept through the banquet hall. The MC reacted swiftly, opening his mouth to diffuse the awkward tension. Just as I slowly stepped down from the stage, I walked straight to Haley, ignoring the tears pooling in her eyes. I pulled off my veil and placed it on Haley's head amid the puzzled gazes of everyone. Startled by my sudden action, Haley stood up in panic. Her face was full of fear, tears rolling down her cheeks. Haley probably thought herself innocent, but clearly today I'm the bride. Why is she also wearing a white gown? I gripped Haley's wrist tightly, leaving her no chance to break free. I dragged Haley stumbling onto the stage and shoved the bouquet into her hands. The entire hall fell silent. Ethan was the first to react, anxiously pulling Haley behind him to shield her. The disdain on my face couldn't have been more obvious. As if oblivious to it all, I turned to face the assembled guests. "Perfect, I don't want to either," I said slowly, enunciating each word. As the words left my mouth, the screen that had been displaying photos of Ethan and me suddenly flickered. When it lit up again, it showed Haley and Ethan together. They held hands by the seaside, kissed on the Ferris wheel, and had even taken lavish wedding photos together. Whispers and speculations filled the entire venue. I gazed at the murmuring guests and smiled brilliantly. "Apologies, everyone. As you can see, I'm not the protagonist of today's arranged business marriage. It's my half-sister, Haley, too." My actions had completely humiliated the Collins family. Ethan stood on the stage flushed with embarrassment, while Haley's face turned deathly pale. My father stormed out in anger, with most guests following suit. Only the Collins family remained, muttering curses under their breath. This business alliance marriage ultimately didn't proceed. The Collins family's reputation in the business world took a nosedive, accompanied by a sharp decline in company stock prices. Ethan never anticipated that I would publicly expose his affair with Haley. Under the pressure of public opinion, Ethan wanted me to step forward and clear up the misunderstanding. I outright refused. Like nothing had happened, I continued reporting the company's recent operations to my father as usual, but I never expected that Ethan would actually bring Haley to our Miller family estate. When the butler led them in, I lounged lazily on the sofa, glancing at them briefly. Haley nervously clasped her hands in front of her, standing beside Ethan, whose expression was dark and unreadable. My dad waved his hand, motioning for them to sit down. Haley visibly relaxed with relief. She deliberately pulled Ethan to sit beside her, her gaze towards me brimming with poorly concealed resentment. "Chloe, you've really misunderstood me," she said. "I swear, I never intended to ruin your wedding." Haley's voice carried a tone of grievance, as if she wanted to explain something to me. I threw a disdainful glance at Haley, which visibly upset Ethan. "Chloe, I admit I was in the wrong with you, but you shouldn't have embarrassed our Collins family like this. What good does this do for you?" Ethan's face was full of resentment. I couldn't help raising an eyebrow. Wasn't this supposed to be an apology? It sounded more like an accusation. "So you get to humiliate Chloe?" My father slammed the table in anger, the loud bang making Ethan flinch. Ethan's lips twitched slightly, his anger beginning to deflate. Haley took this as her cue to inch subtly away from him, putting a symbolic distance between them. I couldn't help but find it amusing as I began casually studying Haley until my gaze settled on her abdomen. Haley hastily covered it, only making her guilt more obvious, as I mocked. "Dad, let's drop it. I can't just stand by and watch my little sister get pregnant before marriage with a child who wouldn't even have their father's name on the birth certificate. Right, sis?" 3. My words left Haley's face alternating between green and pale. Ethan didn't even bother pretending anymore, shielding Haley protectively. My father's expression grew increasingly unpleasant. Haley hesitated several times, words seemingly stuck in her throat, until my father could no longer tolerate the situation and spoke coldly. "I know what you want, but Chloe has been groomed as the heir since childhood. and in recent years received rigorous education overseas. Muller Group will always belong to Chloe. Don't covet what isn't yours to take. My father's words landed with finality, harsh, but music to my ears. Haley's tears fell like unstrung pearls, pattering against her arms, while a fleeting glare of resentment flashed in her eyes again. Ethan nervously dabbed at Haley's tears, shooting me a scathing look in his haste. I pretended not to notice, patting my dad's hand to signal him to calm down. Seeing that I wasn't particularly bothered, my father's expression finally softened. You should leave now. My dad began shooing them away. Haley obviously felt humiliated, while Ethan suppressed his anger, both rising to depart. When his attention returned to me, my father was overwhelmed with worries and could only let out a faint sigh. If it weren't for Sean passing away, you should have married him. My eyes suddenly welled up with tears, a pang of pain throbbing faintly in my heart. Yes, I should have married him. I forced a smile at my father to ease his mind. Ethan, who hadn't gone far, stiffened upon hearing the conversation and abruptly halted his steps. When I turned around, our gazes collided from afar. Ethan was frowning, seemingly lost in thought. Then his eyes suddenly widened, and he strode away briskly, pulling Haley with him. I watched Ethan's retreating figure and curled my lips into a smile. I knew some secrets couldn't stay hidden any longer, for after leaving the estate, I drove back alone to the parking lot. I hadn't walked far when Ethan appeared. He pinned me against the wall, his expression fierce. His arms caged me on either side, in a stance of total confinement. The corners of Ethan's eyes were reddened. He leaned in closer, his ragged breath warming my cheek. I slightly furrowed my brows as waves of nauseating acid churned in my stomach. Ethan instantly transformed into an enraged beast, violently gripping my chin. As pain surged through me, I detected a flicker of jealous hatred in his eyes. Chloe, what do you mean by this? I forced the corners of my lips upward, my gaze dripping with disdain. The silent response drove Ethan into a rage. He furiously smashed the photos in his hand against my face. The sharp edges cut into my skin. As blood welled up, I seemed to see that face I had longed for day and night, the one I could never forget. I crouched down to gather the scattered photos from the floor. Don't you dare pick them up. Chloe, don't you dare touch them. Ethan roared while tugging at my arm, trying to stop me. I turned a deaf ear and forcefully broke free from his grip. Perhaps the hatred in my eyes was too unmistakable, for Ethan startled and released his hold on me. I examined each photograph one by one, then picked them up one after another. Eventually, Ethan could only slump against the car, watching me helplessly. His hands clenched into fists, veins already bulging. I carefully gathered the photos into neat piles, brushing off the dust that had just settled on them. Step by step, I moved closer to Ethan. Just as he had treated me moments ago, I forcefully gripped his chin. I smiled. Word by word, I delivered my message to him, slow and excruciating, like death by 1,000 cuts. Ethan, what a pity. You're just not as good as your uncle. 5. Ethan and I met because of a car accident. It was a serious accident, one dead, one injured. Ethan was the lucky one, with only minor scratches. The unfortunate victim who died was his uncle, Sean Stewart. My first proper meeting with Ethan was at Sean's memorial service. That was also the first time I saw Ethan's mother, her face streaked with tears at the time. After the memorial service, Ethan began asking me out frequently. I sometimes accepted these invitations, sometimes refused them. Later, Ethan went down on one knee clutching an enormous bouquet of vibrant roses, preparing to confess his feelings to me. I deliberately kept him hanging, withholding any response until the Collins family's company teetered on the brink, and I exerted every effort to prop it up. The Collins family struck while the iron was hot, proposing a business-marriage alliance. I didn't refuse. What I wanted hadn't yet been obtained. 6. After shaking off Ethan, I drove to the cemetery. The closer I approached that gravestone, the more violently tears welled up. It feels like a century has passed, though I was just here yesterday. After running away from the wedding venue, I came to see him. I wanted him to see me in my wedding dress, the very dress he personally commissioned from a famous designer for me when we were still together. Even the wedding decorations followed plans we'd made together. He was Sean, the Sean who died in that car accident, Ethan's maternal uncle. I leaned back against the tombstone, my hand stroking the photo on it over and over. The icy cold touch kept reminding me that he was gone. He had been gone for a long time. They say nephews resemble their uncles. Ethan looked almost identical to Sean. But aside from appearance, Ethan truly resembled Sean in no other way. Sean and I met overseas when my parents sent me abroad to study finance and business management. It turned out Sean was my professor. When I first saw him, he wore gold-rimmed glasses with a loose-collared shirt that revealed his exquisite collarbones. I couldn't help but swallow hard, something he teased me about for ages afterward. But it was his appearance that captivated me. In a foreign land, I gradually grew dependent on Sean. I, who always hated the rain the most, began to pray for storms and lightning. Whenever I said, "Professor Sean, I'm scared," he would appear by my side instantly. Sean was 9 years older than me. We dated for 4 years overseas. After returning to China, Sean said he would take me home to meet the most important woman in his life, his sister Sharon, Ethan's mother. We had agreed to meet on the day Sean got into the accident. I waited for him to pick me up with joy in my heart, only to receive news of his car accident. Sean died on his way to fetch me. 7. I spread out each photograph Ethan had gathered before the tombstone. Tears fell upon the photo until I cried myself exhausted. On the eve of the wedding, I finally obtained what I wanted. It was evidence of the truth behind Sean's fatal car accident, yet I dared not tell him. I stared silently at the tombstone until Ethan's parting threats echoed once more through my mind. "Chloe, don't overestimate yourself. The Collins family will never grovel at your feet." I've long known the Collins planted informants around me. That's how Ethan could investigate my relationship with Sean within 2 hours and throw this evidence in my face. I tolerated their petty maneuvers all along, until Haley appeared. Haley showed up out of the blue to claim kinship, saying she was my half-sister. I sniffed out the stench of scheming immediately. Like a cat, I watched the scurrying mouse with wary eyes. Sure enough, Ethan had been secretly meeting with Haley behind my back. When confronted with evidence of their rendezvous, Ethan would instantly grovel before me. "Chloe, there's really nothing between Haley and me. Please believe me." I stared at that face so strikingly similar to Sean's and remained silent. They'd long since set their sights on me. What they really wanted was the Miller Group. Scheming against Sean, scheming against my father, scheming against me. I couldn't help but let out a derisive laugh. Let's settle both old and new grudges together. Ethan completely suppressed all news about the wedding. It said he spent a considerable amount of money. The flood of PR articles now featured Ethan and Haley as the main protagonists. A powerful alliance through marriage, a match made in heaven. Ethan began taking Haley to various business banquets. Haley even publicly proclaimed her status as the heiress of the Miller Group. Controversy erupted instantly, through which Haley secured quite a few excellent collaborations for Ethan. The Collins family rose to fame, while Ethan and Haley thrived more than ever. Troops of reporters began swarming the entrance of our Miller Group headquarters, armed with cameras and microphones, seeking verification. Some even went as far as staking out the entrance to our family estate. My father tried several times to clarify, but I stopped him each time. No response is the best response. Standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, I gazed at the skyscrapers piercing the clouds and smirked coldly. The sensation of falling from great heights must be exhilarating. The secretary knocked on the office door. Several senior colleagues who had long collaborated with Miller Group walked in with faces full of resentment. "Chloe, what's going on? The rumors outside are getting uglier, and your father isn't speaking up. And that Haley girl, is she really your sister?" I nodded but then shook my head. These men were all my father's friends who'd watched me grow up. I'd started gradually getting involved in the family business over a year ago, so naturally our meetings had become more frequent. We chatted casually while sipping coffee, exchanging crucial information in just a few words. Ethan set his sights on a relatively new artificial intelligence project. The Collins family, originally in real estate development, sought to expand into new territories, but artificial intelligence demanded heavy investment. To reduce reliance on Miller Group's funding, Ethan went through round after round of financing. We clinked glasses, exchanging a knowing smile. Just wait and see. 9. Ethan's new project rapidly gained momentum. Multiple funding rounds were secured, raising hundreds of millions of dollars. Ethan's new company was once hailed as a rising star in the tech industry. Watching Ethan's interview footage replay endlessly in the video lifted my spirits. The car slowly came to a halt at the company's entrance, and a man and woman stepped out from the back seat. The woman slipped her hand into the crook of the man's arm, appearing utterly devoted. I smirked, watching them from above. "Finally, you've come, Ethan." Ethan strode briskly into the conference room, with Haley following close behind, her 5-month pregnancy bump slightly visible. Perhaps not wanting to engage with me further, Ethan cut straight to the point. He handed me a document. My fingers tapped idly against the desk. At my glance, the secretary took the file from Ethan's hand and stamped it with the company seal without hesitation. The seamless motion made Ethan's breath hitch. "Won't you even look at what it is?" There was a trace of uncertainty in his tone, yet I was utterly certain. A year ago, the Collins family's company was struggling to stay afloat when the Miller Group became its major shareholder through a capital injection. The Collins family and the Miller Group were already deeply intertwined. For a quick separation, the Collins family needs our Miller Group to divest its shares. I let out a light chuckle. "Withdraw the shares, and we'll be even." My words caused Ethan's gaze to darken abruptly. "Even? Are you so eager to draw a line between us?" His lips pressed tightly together, the words practically forced through clenched teeth. Haley's face suddenly paled by several shades, her figure swaying unsteadily. I was amused by Ethan's words. It's better if you understand it this way. A flash of anger crossed Ethan's face as he wrapped his arm around Haley's waist. Chloe, you must have seen the recent news. You'd better think carefully. Of course I've thought carefully. I instructed my secretary to have Ethan settle all outstanding accounts. Ethan left with a dark expression, which only improved my mood further. 10. Ethan's worth continues to rise exponentially, becoming the center of attention at the cocktail party. As I leaned against the bar distracted, Ethan calmly sauntered over. He clinked his glass against mine with a crisp, clear sound. The crimson liquid swirling in the wineglass bore an unsettling resemblance to the blood that had pooled across the pavement in that car crash. In a daze, I thought of Sean again. Ethan fixed his burning gaze on me and drained the glass in one gulp. Looking at my achievements now, do you regret it? He asked me. I set down the wine glass Ethan had touched, preparing to leave. Chloe, Ethan's voice suddenly turned urgent. Chloe, why did you agree to marry me in the first place? He tried hard to hide the tremor in his voice, but I still caught it. I smiled at him brightly, like a flower in bloom. Why? Because that's what you and your mother wanted, isn't it? My gaze turned sharp, piercing right through him. You knew? Ethan took a step back, a flicker of panic flashing in his eyes. I shook my head to indicate I knew nothing. Ethan, now that the goal of the marriage alliance has been achieved, stop bothering me. With that, I strode away. Of course, I knew exactly what Ethan was referring to. Everything I should know, and shouldn't, I already knew. 11. After the liquidation concluded, the company promptly issued a share withdrawal announcement. My father finally came forward to clarify the matter. The rumors that had been circulating widely finally came to an end. Indeed, from beginning to end, I have always been the only heir my father officially recognizes. Haley is nothing more than an illegitimate child even her own father won't acknowledge. The Collins family, long since restored to power, couldn't care less. When the marriage alliance was first announced, the Collins family had already seized the opportunity to make a hefty profit. Haley did come to make trouble a few times, but my father drove her out every time. Seizing the moment when Ethan's new company was preparing to go public, I struck. Let a rat prance around long enough, and you'll have to give it a good scare now and then. The Miller Group began aggressively suppressing the Collins family's company. My actions acted like a fuse, directly detonating those investors who had previously reached preliminary agreements with Ethan. They all switched sides, and the broken capital chain led to Ethan's failure in the new round of financing. However, product development and market promotion in artificial intelligence require massive funding. Ethan's tech company suffered a heavy blow in a short period of time. Not only that, but several real estate projects previously snatched from our Miller Group by the Collins family also came to a standstill. Ethan, who had initially been smug about his achievements, panicked. He called me several times, but I declined every call. Haley also came to see me with her belly showing. Ethan's mother Sharon forced Haley to beg me for money. She even threatened to expose my father's marital affair and Haley's status as a love child to blackmail me. I gave Haley 4 words: bear the consequences yourself. 12. Before Sharon could expose my father's scandal to the media, Ethan's company completely collapsed. Due to financial constraints, Ethan embezzled funds from the Collins family company and injected them into his own tech startup. The incident was exposed by an insider. Even though the Collins family didn't confirm it, multiple investment institutions were summoned for questioning. Ethan's company faced severe scrutiny and was overwhelmed by its own troubles. The entire business and tech community spoke of Ethan with nothing but scorn. Technological pseudo-innovation, promotional videos plagiarized, even the core technical personnel have fabricated resumes. Ethan's project was labeled as pseudo-technology. In the end, he still couldn't withstand the multiple pressures from funding and technology. Overnight, from prosperity to decline, a complete collapse. The tech company went bankrupt, and Ethan's reputation was ruined. Without the support of the Miller Group, the Collins family's original business also ran into trouble. Ethan had previously embezzled substantial public funds, leaving him powerless to turn the situation around now. A sudden wave of inexplicable gloom tightened my chest, prompting me to seek out Sean. The late-night wind howled past as I tightened my coat around me. Sitting before Sean's gravestone, I alternated between gulps of alcohol and bitter tears. Sean's dying wish was to help Ethan safeguard the Collins family business until he could retire honorably. Sean and I walked opposite paths, yet I've never regretted a moment. We rambled on like this throughout the night, until dawn whitened the skyline. In my dazed state, I seemed to see Sean again. His eyes brimmed with heartache and disappointment as his figure grew ever more distant from me. I knew it, Sean would definitely blame me. Otherwise, why hadn't he visited me even once in over a year? But today, he came. My face pale, I grasped at the empty air again and again. I collapsed to the ground, crying uncontrollably. Sean, you'll blame me, won't you? Don't blame me, okay? In truth, the first time I learned of Ethan wasn't after the car accident. I heard it from Sean. Sean said his nephew was called Ethan. He always compared me to Ethan, saying I was just as dumb as him. After we got together, Sean would sometimes mention his sister Sharon. That was one of the rare moments Sean would show tenderness when talking about her instead of me. I think Sean must love his sister dearly. Sean said Sharon had it tough. Their parents passed away early, leaving Sharon no choice but to marry a man in his 50s, Ethan's father, with young Sean in tow. Later, Ethan's father died too, leaving behind the Collins family mess. Not only did Sharon have to manage the Collins business, but she also had to take care of Ethan and Sean. Fortunately, Sean proved himself worthy, balancing his studies while assisting Sharon with company affairs. Later, Sharon sent him abroad for advanced studies. On the day I returned home after graduation, Sean resigned from his overseas teaching position. The Collins family business encountered difficulties. Concerned about Sharon, Sean wanted to return and help. After returning home, I took over Miller Group. Meanwhile, Sean has been tirelessly supporting the Collins family, exhausting himself with their affairs. Yet none of us had anticipated that the grateful Sean would lose his life because of it. I sat on the ground, gazing at the star-studded night sky. My heart contracted rhythmically, tightening painfully with each beat. I was ashamed of the truth I knew. I felt Sean deserved better. 14. Sean's death was no accident. That day in the car, Ethan had gotten into an argument with Sean and lunged madly for the steering wheel in Sean's hands. No one noticed the truck speeding straight toward them. If Sean hadn't wrenched the steering wheel at the last moment to swerve the car, Ethan would have been the one to die. After the accident, the police immediately cordoned off the scene. When I arrived at the scene, it was already a bloody mess. I felt as though I were filled with lead from head to toe, almost unable to move. I gasped for air, sensing Sean's presence growing fainter and fainter, but I couldn't find him. By the time I reached the hospital, Sean had already been pronounced dead and taken to the morgue. As I passed by the ward, I saw Sharon. She was fussing over her son by the hospital bed, weeping uncontrollably. I also saw Sean's nephew, Ethan. He lay on the hospital bed, barely harmed. I had my father call the hospital director, then walked alone into the morgue. With trembling hands, I lifted the white sheet. Sean lay there, his face covered in blood, motionless. He's always so particular about cleanliness, so why is his face so dirty now? I tried talking to him, but he wouldn't respond. I attempted to wipe his face with my sleeve, only to smear it worse. Furious with myself, I started hitting my own head. Why am I so useless? I can't even wipe a face properly. I begged Sean to open his eyes and look at me, but he still ignored me. His body grew colder, stiffer, and only then did I realize Sean had abandoned me. 15. On the day of Sean's funeral, the Collins family kept things solemn and simple. Sharon rested her head on her son Ethan's shoulder, her tears flowing like a broken dam. I wanted to comfort her. She was the sister Sean cherished and respected most. I walked up behind them, just about to speak when I overheard their mother-son conversation. At that moment, I felt as if I'd plummeted into an icy abyss. Mom, why didn't you tell me in advance about arranging something like that? You nearly killed me. Mom, why does Uncle insist on meddling in our family's company? Mom, the police won't find out, will they? Who knew you'd be in his car? And I never meant for him to die. He was just unlucky. Remember, Ethan, it was the truck driver who was drunk driving. It had nothing to do with you. It was your uncle who failed to control the steering wheel. You're a victim too. Ethan's voice was laced with unbearable impatience. Not even a single tear had fallen from his eyes. Sharon, meanwhile, alternately feigned tears and comforted him. I simply couldn't believe my ears. What had Sharon arranged? What did she mean by not intending for him to die? A thick fog of confusion clouded my vision until everything became a blur. I dug my nails deep into my palms, the sharp pain confirming that this was all terrifyingly real. I spent money to pull some strings and entered the operation room. I watched with my own eyes as Sean was sent into the crematorium's incinerator. I watched as the flames gradually engulfed Sean's flesh, inch by inch, until it disappeared. I couldn't wait to find out what Sharon meant. The hatred burning in my chest raged like a furnace fire. Sean would never know that his devotion had been nothing but unrequited goodwill. Sharon and Ethan didn't need Sean at all. In fact, they suspected him of sinister motives. Nor would Sean ever discover that his beloved sister wore the cruelest mask imaginable. Sean would never know that his death was intricately connected to Sharon. At that moment, I actually felt relieved that Sean would never find out. Otherwise, he would have been devastated. 16. 2 months later, Ethan stepped into my office once again. But this time, it wasn't Haley accompanying him. Instead, it was Ethan's mother, Sharon. Sharon wore a tailored dress that accentuated her dignified and elegant demeanor, but I knew the filth that lay beneath. Sharon affectionately took my hand, her voice choked with tears. Ethan, meanwhile, sat awkwardly to the side. His lips were pressed into a tight line, silent. "Chloe, are you angry with me?" Sharon tentatively asked. I lifted my eyelids to glance at her and withdrew my hand without any noticeable reaction. My stance was unmistakable. Speaking softly again and setting aside her pride, Sharon said, "Chloe, it's our Collins family that wronged you, making you embarrassed on your wedding day. It was all Ethan's fault, and I've already given him a good lesson." I raised my eyes to look at her once more, my tone laced with a trace of sarcasm. "Oh, how exactly was she taught a lesson?" I asked Sharon, perhaps caught off guard by how direct my question was. Sharon choked on her words. She rubbed her hands together awkwardly, her gaze at me now carrying a hint of barely concealed displeasure. "Chloe, after all, Haley is your sister. And what's more, Haley is pregnant." Sharon paused, glancing at Ethan's ashen face beside her before continuing. "Chloe, I'm begging you, could you please help us, give our Collins family a chance to catch our breath?" I smirked, finding it almost laughable. Even now, Sharon still thinks my fallout with the Collins family was simply over that wedding. Sharon's hypocritical expression made my stomach churn with disgust. Suppressing the urge to vomit, I spoke calmly. "No." 17. I excused myself to the restroom. After leaving the office, I gave the secretary a look and turned toward the monitoring room. On the surveillance screen, Sharon stood at the office door, bracing it firmly shut. She was animatedly directing Ethan while spewing vicious insults about me. Ethan sat down at my desk. He skillfully tapped the keyboard, entered the password, and turned on my computer. Inside the computer were our Miller Group's bidding proposals for the new project. This project was a real estate development initiative we were currently pursuing. With government backing, it had strong planning prospects. The Collins family is counting on this project to turn things around. I wasn't planning to get involved initially, but since the Collins family wants it, I might as well give them a push. I watched as Ethan pulled out a USB drive from his pocket and swiftly began copying files. The whole process was carried out rapidly and decisively, as if it had been meticulously planned all along. By the time they composed themselves and settled back on the sofa, the secretary knocked at the door. Hearing the secretary say I had gone to a meeting, Ethan suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. Sharon shot the secretary an ambiguous look and quickly pulled Ethan away. Yes, my secretary was their planted informant by my side. Except, they'd never dreamed that my secretary was actually my informant planted among them. I arranged for someone to deliberately spread positive project information in front of Ethan, misleading them into thinking they still had a chance to turn the tables. I also had my secretary intentionally leak my computer password and the pre-prepared plan to them. Meanwhile, in my office, I had already installed pinhole cameras. They stepped into the web of my design, one by one, waiting to be harvested. 18. On the day of the project bidding, I went to observe at the scene. Ethan's proposal presentation was very successful. It was essentially a rewrite based on my version. Once the presentation was over, Ethan even gave me a triumphant eyebrow raise, radiating absolute confidence. But little did Ethan know, I never wanted this project in the first place. The final outcome, of course, was Ethan and the project team clicking instantly. I feigned disappointment as I left, though inwardly I was bubbling with excitement. Due to cash flow demands, Ethan paid a steep price to secure another round of funding. Sharon even mortgaged all their family properties. On the day construction began, just after Ethan and Sharon finished the ribbon cutting, work at the site was abruptly halted. Large crowds of local residents surged forward, trapping Ethan and Sharon at the very center. Before they could even call for help, Sharon and Ethan were already being jostled, their clothes disheveled and their faces ashen. It wasn't until government officials intervened that the residents ceased their aggressive actions. Sharon was utterly terrified. Ethan, while supporting her, bared his teeth in a grimace. He roared at the law enforcement officers, demanding to know why their construction had been halted. The officers patiently explained the reasons to them. Sharon fainted on the spot, while Ethan collapsed to the ground. I had spotted the issues with that project during the initial research phase, but Ethan was too desperate to turn things around, so much so that he never bothered to conduct thorough research when evaluating the project. And the misinformation I deliberately leaked made Ethan even more convinced. That piece of land was an urban demolition project by the government, with many residents refusing to relocate. Without the government's knowledge, the developers forcibly evicted them, and now even compensation negotiations remain unresolved. Every document that the developers gave Ethan, from the initial land use permit to subsequent construction licenses, was either expired or outright forged. By now, the developers have fled with the money. The Collins family is completely ruined. 19. Because Sharon had mortgaged all their property, the lenders forcibly evicted them. Against his will, Ethan had to take Sharon and Haley to live in the apartment where he used to meet Haley secretly. Haley, 8 or 9 months pregnant, couldn't bear such hardship, and Sharon, already deeply troubled, was in no mood to cater to a pregnant woman's emotional needs. The two kept arguing until, during a heated shove, Haley accidentally fell to the ground. At the hospital, the formed fetus was taken from her womb, no longer breathing. Haley was completely devastated. When I arrived at the hospital, Ethan and Sharon were sitting in the hallway, looking exhausted and disheveled. Seeing me arrive, Ethan's face lit up with joy. He rushed towards me like the wind and suddenly pulled me into his arms before I could react. His voice trembled with exhaustion. "Chloe, I was wrong. Let's get back together. Help me, please, won't you?" I pushed Ethan away in disgust, my secretary quickly pulling alcohol wipes from her bag to hand me. "Disgusting," I said while wiping my hands. Ethan's face flushed red then pale, his eyes gradually darkening with resentment. His crimson eyes bore into me as I gave my secretary a few instructions before sending her back to the office ahead of me. As soon as the secretary left, Ethan suddenly went berserk and grabbed me by the throat. The air grew increasingly thin, but in the next instant, Ethan was kicked to the ground. The police had arrived. I was the one who called them. I presented the high-definition surveillance footage from the office that day. I accused Ethan and Sharon of stealing trade secrets and charged Ethan with attempted murder for what he had just done. Ethan and Sharon were still hurling abuse at me as the police led them away. Before they left, I told them Collins' company had been acquired by me at a bargain price. I watched their expressions and chuckled softly. Mice are destined to be eaten by cats. 20. Ethan hired a lawyer to defend them. They wanted to gain my forgiveness, which I refused multiple times. During the final pretrial mediation, I stood before them. I never expected Haley to come too. Haley cried while hugging my legs. Perhaps because she had just been discharged from the hospital, Haley looked extremely frail, her face especially haggard. I frowned and tried to pry her hand away, but she clung to me desperately, refusing to let go. "Big sister, I'm your real sister. Please take me home with you." Haley was sobbing uncontrollably, her voice full of pleading. I shook my head, pulled a document from my bag, and threw it before her. "Real sister? Sharon, do you think she is?" The moment my words fell, Sharon looked at me in horror. It was Sharon who had brought Haley back in the first place. Haley's appearance before my father wouldn't have happened without Sharon pulling strings behind the scenes. Even the paternity test report was forged by Sharon, and I'd long since discovered that Haley wasn't my sister at all, not my father's flesh and blood. To seize our Miller family's fortune, Sharon truly stopped at nothing. Haley sat slumped on the ground, clutching the genuine paternity test report, dazed for what felt like an eternity. What I never expected was Sharon, always so haughty, suddenly dropping to her knees before me with a thud. I quickly sidestepped as Sharon kept bowing her head to apologize to me. Ethan was also dragged down to his knees by her. The sight of them kneeling in apology sent a chill through me. Like an avenging specter, I sought to claim their lives. I leaned down, my icy voice whispering in their ears. "Did you ever imagine this day would come when you schemed against Sean, when you plotted against our Miller family? Go die for Sean's sake." Sharon's face was suffused with disbelief. With a curled lip, I uttered my final words. "Oh, I forgot to mention I'm Sean's fiancé." 21. I handed over the truth about Sean's car accident to the police. The complete chain of evidence left Sharon speechless. That truck driver was a gambler. Because of the massive debt, Sharon paid $10 million. The original plan was for the truck to only overturn Sean's car, leaving him disabled. But Ethan caused the accident. Back then, Sharon used the excuse of being too shocked and distracted to pursue excessive accountability. The driver was only sentenced to 7 years. Sharon was very clever. The evidence of her hiring someone for the crime was buried tightly. Even the imprisoned driver kept silent for her. I tangled with them for a long time, and prying open the driver's mouth came at a great cost. But before all the evidence could be gathered, Sharon suddenly brought in Haley. Sharon's eyes brimmed with greed. While wondering what exactly she was scheming, I adjusted my strategy. I pretended to know nothing, yet their schemes against me were no different from those they once orchestrated against Sean. My heart grew colder for Sean. Time and again, I resolved to lift them high into the clouds, only to pull the ladder away with my own hands. I would ruin them utterly, leaving them no chance for redemption in this lifetime. After stepping out of the courthouse, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. "Sean, I've avenged you for you. Please don't blame me for taking matters into my own hands." 22. On the day when all dust had settled, I went to see Sean again. His gravestone was covered with fallen leaves. I cleaned them up little by little. He had always been so particular about cleanliness. I brought a large bouquet of white lilies and placed them gently before his tombstone. I want to tell Sean that my love for him will last until death. Leaning against the tombstone, my face streaked with tears, I just want to tell Sean how much I miss him. Gently stroking Sean's photograph, I whisper to him, I'm so sorry, Sean. My voice grows increasingly choked with sobs. Sean, you haven't proposed to me yet. Sean, if I say I'm your fiancé, you won't be angry, right? Sean, look at this. Doesn't it look familiar? I fished out a ring from my bag and slipped it onto my ring finger right in front of Sean. The ring was given to me that day by the funeral home staff. He said it had fallen out of Sean's pocket. After returning home, I fell seriously ill. In my delirium, I saw Sean. After all this time, Sean was finally willing to come see me. Countless scattered diamonds formed a galaxy across the sky, while a sea of blue flowers wound their way toward the stage under the guiding lights. In the brilliant blue sea of stars, Sean walked slowly, dressed in a crisp white suit. In his hands, he held a bouquet of pure, radiant white lilies. From his pocket, he fumbled out a diamond ring and knelt on one knee before me. He asked, Chloe, in our next life, will you still marry me? I wept as I stood there wearing the wedding dress he had specially tailored for me. Sean, I do extra story, stolen moments. If this were a dream, I hope I never wake from it, because I never imagined I'd meet Sean again. 1. Chloe, wake up. You dare fall asleep in Professor Stewart's class? A familiar female voice reached my ears, pulling me from deep slumber. My head throbbed with waves of dizziness, until the scene before me came into focus, when my chest began to tremble uncontrollably. I shot to my feet, my gaze locking onto the man standing at the lectern and never wavering again. Sean, it's Sean. My heart thumped wildly, every drop of blood in my body boiling with heat. In the lecture hall, every student turned to look at me in unison. Sean placed the book in his hand on the lectern, his voice as gentle as it had always been. Ms. Miller, is something wrong? I stiffened all over and shook my head. When I sat down again, tears were already streaming down my face. I pinched my thigh hard, feeling as if a lifetime had passed. I remember this class. The first time I met Sean was in this very lecture. The same familiar gold-rimmed glasses, the same loose-fitting shirt, the same him who haunts my dreams. My deskmate Olivia handed me a tissue with a puzzled expression. Bad dream? I nodded. Had a nightmare. I waited for Sean along his usual route back to the office, just like I used to. From a distance, I could already spot that tall figure. He seemed to be on a phone call with someone. I wanted to move closer, but was afraid of interrupting him. As the battle between heaven and man raged within me, Sean had already stepped right in front of my face. Classmate Miller, were you waiting for me? Sean's voice slammed into my heart with a force. When I looked up and met his gaze, his eyes were filled with my reflection. Yes, Professor Sean, I've been waiting for you. I suppressed the longing and unbearable bitterness in my heart, flashing him what was probably the brightest smile of my life. Sean, I've truly waited for you for so long. So this time, whether it's heaven's mercy or just a fleeting dream, don't ever leave me again, okay? Sean froze for a moment. He said, okay, as he walked side by side with me on the campus. We remained silent with each other. Sean was still as cold as an iceberg, just like before, until the breeze blew by, and leaves covered the ground. We spoke simultaneously. Professor Sean, I didn't mean to fall asleep today. Classmate Miller, can I have your contact information? I know, okay. 3. Olivia was the first to notice something was off about me. She asked me why I'd been grinning at my phone nonstop lately. I pressed my phone to my chest. Secret, Olivia feigned displeasure, leaning her head closer. Let me tell you a secret, she said. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Professor Stewart is in love, Olivia whispered, placing a finger to her lips as she signaled me to keep it a secret. She mentioned that a few days ago when she went to hand in her homework, she saw Sean staring at his phone screen without blinking. Not only that, but Sean's ears were also turning red. Later, she went to gossip with other classmates. All the classmates said that Sean, the elusive flower atop the high peak, had finally been plucked. They say phone wallpapers always feature pictures of girlfriends. I sheepishly averted my gaze elsewhere. Olivia kept chattering away until Sean's call came through, and I accidentally hit speakerphone. Chloe, I'm here to pick you up. Today's destination is the aquarium. Olivia's voice abruptly stopped. My face instantly flushed red. 4. Time felt like stolen treasure. I would often wake from dreams in a panic, only to calm upon confirming I was still abroad. I've grown increasingly addicted to Sean's scent. Every time we meet, I always cling to his hand, refusing to let go. Sean didn't know. Once I was truly drawn to his appearance. Now I'm genuinely afraid of losing him. Sean would laugh at me just like before, mocking me for being useless. Yet his hand was gripping mine even tighter. 5. Sean wasn't quite the same as before. He doesn't seem to mention Sharon and Ethan much to me these days. Occasionally mentioned, it was just glossed over in passing. I've tested him. I thought, what if he's like me? If I could come back, couldn't he do the same? But soon, I dismissed that thought again. Sean had no idea about the things Sharon and Ethan had done. I was a bit puzzled. I called my dad and asked him to keep an eye on the Collins family's company for me. Until graduation day, Sean said he wanted to return to China with me. My heart sank instantly. I asked him why. Sean curled his lips. Secret. 6. After returning to my home country, I was constantly uneasy. Sean, as before, joined the Collins family's company. I also took over the Miller Group. My meetings with Sean kept getting shorter. Even so, Sean would appear before me every day. He looked utterly exhausted, and it broke my heart. Sean, be kind to yourself. I struggled to hold back my sobs. It wasn't that I hadn't thought about stopping Sean, but I couldn't speak. How was I supposed to explain this to Sean? How to explain Sharon's heart as venomous as a serpent? How to explain Ethan's vile and despicable nature? How to explain how I had once lost him forever? So, I chose another way, before Sharon could act. 7. The Collins family has fallen, and faster than I had anticipated. Even my carefully orchestrated plan to completely dismantle the Collins family's business empire had barely begun before it was already over. I never expected Sharon would pin all the blame on Sean. Not only that, but Sharon also spread it widely online. They say she married a man in his 50s just for Sean back then. They called Sean an ungrateful wretch, a jinx who brought nothing but misfortune. Sharon forced Sean to clean up the Collins mess, while Ethan spewed nothing but insults. Suddenly, Sean found himself at the center of a storm. By the time I rushed to Collins Corporation, the entrance was already swarmed by reporters. I called Sean, but the line was busy. Once more, the image of Sean lying in a pool of blood flashed before my eyes, and I nearly fainted. Just as I was about to stumble, a familiar warmth enveloped me around the waist. Idiot, be careful. It was Sean's voice. I finally breathed a sigh of relief and threw myself into his arms. 8. Sean intends to acquire all the shares held by Sharon and Ethan at the highest market value price in history. The condition was to publicly renounce their familial ties in the newspaper. Sean would no longer be Sharon's brother or Ethan's uncle. I stared at Sean in astonishment, my mind raging like a stormy sea. Sharon agreed. Sharon took the money and left with Ethan. Sean immediately announced that Collins Corporation would now operate under the Miller Group as its subsidiary. When my father appeared, cameras clicked frenziedly like a barrage of rifles and cannons. I was left standing there in stunned silence. Only later did I discover it was all Sean's setup. 9. Sharon had come to make a scene several times. The money Sean had given them was quickly squandered by Ethan. Ethan was always a half-baked amateur, obsessed with developing artificial intelligence yet ending up tripping over his own ambitions. Ethan, down on his luck at the mall, met Haley at a bar. Love at first sight. Sharon didn't care for Haley at all, who was working at the bar. But Haley was pregnant. Sharon had no choice but to agree to Ethan marrying Haley. Ethan was determined to make a comeback. He set his sights on a plot of land, secured funding and loans, only for things to go awry during construction. Not only did he fail to make money, but he was also mired in debt. Haley filed for divorce from Ethan, and tragically fell down the stairs during the confrontation with him. Haley suffered a massive hemorrhage and ultimately both mother and child were lost. Ethan was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sent to prison. Sharon went mad. Sean had her committed to a mental asylum. From now on, everything's over. 10. Sean proposed to me. He pulled a jewelry box from his pocket, inside which still lay the very ring I had once worn. I hadn't even had time to shed a tear when my father's eyes were already brimming with tears. Sean whispered, "Chloe, will you marry me?" 11. Scattered diamonds stitched together the Milky Way, stars ablaze across a sea of blue. I finally put on the wedding dress Sean had specially tailored for me. Sean, dressed in a crisp white suit, took my hand from my father's grasp. The audience erupted into thunderous applause. The solemn voice of the MC rang in my ears. "Mr. Sean Stewart, do you take Ms. Chloe Miller to be your wife? As her husband, promise to love, protect, and encourage her forever, through joy and sorrow, through wealth and poverty, never leaving her side, and spending a lifetime together. Would you be willing?" Sean gazed at me with burning intensity, the corners of his eyes tinged with red. He said, "I do. In this life, the next, and all the lives after, always, forever, I will." 12. This must be a dream. Yet within it, I seem to have lived countless years. I went on our honeymoon overseas with Sean, and I also have 2 lovely children. This dream has truly lasted so very long, so long that I've never woken from it. So long that Sean has always been by my side. The end.